to the TV Trash Summer Spectacular. Before we take on the final review, I want to touch on some of the things I unfortunately couldn't get to in detail this month. I know there are a lot of episodes I could have reviewed, and it wasn't easy picking the ones I thought were the worst of the bunch. I may find a way to review those others someday, we'll see. There were also parts I didn't rant on because I actually didn't think they were that bad, like the giant chicken fights. They're actually just surreal and ridiculous for me to enjoy, and the fact that they're animated, unlike the Conway Twitty bits, mean they're at least putting effort into them. With that having been said, it's time for the big one. This is the one you probably all knew was coming, what many people consider to be the absolute worst Family Guy episode ever. The moment where many up and quit on the series for good and all due to its mean-spirited, pointless preachiness. Let's get into Not All Dogs Go to Heaven. There may not have been more hatred spewed out toward a particular TV episode ever. Viewers and fans have written drawn-out pages on TV tropes and other sites covering everything they consider wrong with this, and if they ever see a new episode that could be considered the worst, they always go back to this one for comparison. So naturally, we're ending this month-long special by taking a look at what, by popular opinion, seems to be the bottom of the barrel. We open with the Griffins going to the local Star Trek convention.
You can even try on LeVar Burton's visor. Why would he wear these? Who would invent these for him?
Who would make a joke about that? Stewie meets the cast of Next Generation and completely geeks out. How he's been able to watch many episodes of the show at his age is never explained, but who cares? When this episode first aired, that was what they advertised in the promos, that the cast of TNG was being reunited for this episode. And then they push it into a subplot, which was just one of many things that hacked off so many viewers. In fact, the DVD of the episode still advertises this as the main plot, at least on Netflix. Basically, MacFarlane and the writers used the TNG cast to lure us into the episode so they could spring the real story and message on us. Classy! The rest of the family runs into another fan who showed up while suffering from the mumps. A big problem for Meg because her parents never immunized her.
Well, it was 1992 and I couldn't be bothered with anything that didn't involve Dan Cortez.
Much of the remaining first act is a bunch of unfunny bits of the rest of the family having fun at Meg's expense.
Here's your TV, Meg. It's a little old and there's no remote and it only gets one channel and it's not on that channel right now.
Your mother made soup for you. Here you go, honey.
Peter Griffin, you are damn lucky Elliot Stabler isn't in Rhode Island. You would think that all this abuse is meant to make us want to support Meg, but given what happens afterward, that's clearly not what the writers want us to do. Once she finally has time alone, she ends up tuning in a religious infomercial with Kirk Cameron.
Well, you know who does love you? The Lord.
That actually makes sense that Meg would latch on to such a message. Maybe this episode can work. Meg starts trying to integrate her new ultra-fundamentalism into the household, but she isn't that successful with one particular member of the family.
Oh, you're barking up the wrong tree, Meg. I'm an atheist.
Yes, after all these years of living in their house, Brian now reveals that he's not a believer, even though he was seen reading Bible passages and suggesting to Peter that God was pissed at him in the earlier seasons. But I'm willing to let that slide because those type of continuity errors are actually pretty common in many TV shows, as writers often don't fully decide on a character's complete persona until much later. It doesn't, however, excuse how annoying Brian's fully developed persona has become. Brian first gives the tired old reasoning of how our space exploration has never found that big bearded guy in the clouds bit, but then as Meg keeps trying to convert him, he goes with all the hatred that religion has brought forth.
What you call God is inside you, all of us. And I just hate to see people hating and killing each other over their own interpretation of what they're not smart enough to understand.
So in 8 minutes' time, we've actually seen a logical message for Christianity and a logical message for atheism. Spoiler alert, it's all down the crapper from here. Meg takes Brian's refusal to convert the best way she can, by reporting Brian to the media, who dub him, "Oh, come on!" Really? Really? You're saying the media would brand someone as being worse than a guy who slaughtered millions of people because he's not religious? You really think you can get away with that, Seth? Yes, they are in New England, one of the most devout regions north of the Mason-Dixon, but I still find it hard to believe that every single person in Quahog all of a sudden acts like Pat Robertson just because they found one non-believer. This persecution doesn't work because we've never seen any evidence that these people are so fundamentalist. Furthermore, why would you take Meg's butt monkey status to the extreme for the first half of the episode, only to try and turn her into such an unlikable antagonist for the second half? I mean, that's the kind of heel turn TNA Impact would pull! Brian is ostracized by the entire town, which proves to be more than just an inconvenience because he's unable to purchase his precious liquor. But he finds a way to overcome his dependency to stand up for his beliefs. Or rather, he just tells Meg he's converted so she'll tell everyone to back off and he can get his booze. How is this supposed to make us believe Brian's doing the right thing? It just makes him look weak and willing to compromise his principles, or at least lie about doing so, to satisfy his own addictions. It looks like Brian is going to get away with his charade until Meg takes him to a gathering of her fellow Christian friends.
God's will, Brian.
A book burning? You're really going there? Again, I live in the South, where we have some of the most nutball religious freaks in the country. I just saw my governor lead a state-sponsored prayer rally that had First Amendment violation written all over it, and I've never seen or heard of a public book burning taking place in this day, let alone one that wouldn't be stopped by the authorities, if anything, for the risk of a fire hazard! Once more, this is MacFarlane saying that every single religious person on the planet is an extremist that wants to destroy science and education and send us back to the Dark Ages. You know that South Park episode where they claim Family Guy is written by manatees? The manatees should be insulted! Brian has to admit he lied so he can try one last time to get Meg to stop her extremism. And it's now that we have come to the moment. The very point that many a Family Guy viewer claims to be the show's ultimate dethroning moment of suck. Brace yourselves, here it comes.
If there were a God, would he have put you here on Earth with a flat chest and a fat ass?
I'm made in his image.
Really? Would he give you a smoking hot mom like Lois and then have you grow up looking like Peter?
Well...
And what kind of God would put you in a house where no one respects or cares about you, not even enough to get you a damn mumps shot?
Oh no. You're right, Brian. You're right.
Yes, you heard it right. Brian's ultimate proof against an actual loving God is that Meg is ugly and has a bad family. he becomes just as much of an asshole as Peter and Lois are to her just to prove his point. And then he goes into his own preaching spiel about how she'll find the answers she's looking for just by living her life or some bullcrap, trying to make it seem like he's been trying to help her all this time.
But what is there to believe in without God? Where do the answers come from?
Well, that's all part of the human experience. It's what we're here to find out. And I bet you that the real answer to the nature of our existence is going to be more unimaginably amazing than we can possibly conceive.
Sorry, Brian, you can't take away the one thing that made Meg happy, do so in the most insulting fashion imaginable, and then claim to be her friend. It doesn't work like that! If he had tried convincing her that she can still believe while reminding her about Jesus' preachings of love and tolerance, that would have worked. That's the ultimate problem with this episode. They could have had a conclusion to where both Meg and Brian learn to accept their differences even if they don't agree, much like Homer and Lisa did on The Simpsons when Lisa became a vegetarian. But no! They had to have an ending that supposedly proves Brian is right. This is why so many people hate this episode, because it not only has to end with MacFarlane's mouthpiece right and everyone else wrong, but it does so in the flimsiest, most ridiculous, make-no-sense manner possible! Now, a lot of people have fired back since that MacFarlane shouldn't be blamed for this episode because he wasn't the writer. In fact, you can make that case for most of what I've covered here, since he's only credited as the writer of 2 full episodes and part of a 3rd. But that's like saying Vince McMahon shouldn't be blamed for a bad wrestling storyline. MacFarlane remained the man in charge of Family Guy for the first 7 years, so everything had to get his approval. What's more, a lot of episodes are originally pitched by MacFarlane or another producer and then handed off to another writer to flesh it out. Did MacFarlane pitch Not All Dogs? Well, he is an admitted atheist and a Star Trek fan. Make your own conclusion. So, would I consider this the worst Family Guy episode ever? I can't call it that, but that's only because the disgusting humor and even worse writing of Family Gay is so burned into my brain. But still, yeah, it's awful. It insults Christians, atheists, and everyone in between. Brian comes off as a hypocritical elitist, almost all the remaining cast is derailed, and the entire episode was a scam because they promoted a side story that they knew people would like more to get them to tune in. It's one of the ultimate examples of MacFarlane caring more about his own social messages than making good comedy, and I can easily see why so many rank it as the worst ever. And so, after a full month of pointing out some of the worst Family Guy has churned out, what else is there to say? Fine, I'll tell you. You have become one of the worst examples of comedy out there. You've not only made all your characters as unlikable as possible, but you do nothing but pile on insult after insult of anyone out there that's more famous than you and rail against nearly every TV show that paved the way for yours, giving hardly any evidence other than trust me, it sucks. Yeah, I insult TV shows, but I try to back it up with logic. I also give examples of good stuff to hopefully show I'm not just some bitter, jealous comedian who goes around hating everything that comes out of Hollywood like you. I don't go around claiming that dead children's entertainers hate all Jews with no proof. What if I were to suggest that you're just bitter at Disney because they poached your best director? God, you're a hypocrite! You know, I could respect you for going after Fox News, but saying it's okay for the left to be a bunch of liars and frauds because they're your people doesn't work. Oh, and you had to go off on big businesses taking away jobs, but you go and snatch up almost every piece of Fox's Sunday night lineup once another show gets dropped. And then there's the little fact that your animation is made in Korea. You want to help American jobs? Have your damn show drawn in this country. And by the way, insulting Southerners doesn't make you better than them. What happened to you claiming they were good at heart into Love and Die in Dixie? Oh right, that was during the time when network executives could put you in your place. But I could forgive all of that if you just weren't so unfunny. That's what you are, a bitter, preachy, unfunny asshole! See you next time, guys. See you fucking next time on TV Trash.